It took billions of years for the Earth to carve the oceans into the pattern we know today. Hundreds of millions of years of evolution and adaptation have resulted in the creation of countless species that interact to form the largest ecosystem on the planet. Deep in the ocean blue, every species has a role, its own specific function, in a delicate balance among all species. From time immemorial, mankind has fished for survival. The never-ending challenge is how to share the sea's resources with other species that depend on them. Increasingly sophisticated commercial fishing practices using advanced technologies have, in the last 50 years, dramatically improved marine harvesting. We keep going farther and deeper and catching more and more fish. But we seem to have reached the limit. The ocean's ability to meet human nutritional needs is being exhausted, a result of decades of overfishing and abuse. Scientists consider that if nothing is done rapidly to correct the situation, we will see the collapse of commercial fishing within the next few decades. Yet over 1 billion people depend directly on the sea for survival. The future of many societies may well hinge on whatever conservation measures we are prepared to introduce over the next years. As part of its mission, 1,000 Days for the Planet, the oceanographic schooner Sedna IV set sail for Indonesia, a country of more than 17,000 islands, where many villages depend on fishing for their food and livelihood. Chief of Mission, Jean Lemire.
We're heading to Bali, an exotic island surrounded by coral reefs, known for its remarkable marine biodiversity. Located in the heart of what we call the Coral Triangle, the islands of Indonesia harbor 76% of all species of coral. These reefs provide shelter and food to 37% of all the coral-dwelling fish on Earth.
This amazing variety of species has led to a thriving commerce in aquarium fish. It's a lucrative business valued at around $1 billion annually, all categories combined. Of the 40 countries that export tropical fish, Indonesia and the Philippines supply at least 85% of ocean fish to the world's aquariums. The market for tropical fish skyrocketed after the animated film Finding Nemo hit the screen in 2003. An estimated 30 million fish and marine creatures are harvested every year on the planet's coral reefs. There are no regulations about which species can be caught. The strong demand for aquarium fish has led to the widespread use of a destructive fishing technique, cyanide fishing. A solution of sodium cyanide stuns the fish, making them much easier to catch. This technique rapidly degrades the coral reefs. An estimated 1 square meter of coral is destroyed for every fish caught. Cyanide blocks photosynthesis in the algae that live symbiotically with the corals, depriving them of their main source of food. Cyanide, even in minute quantities, kills the polyps, leading to the death and the bleaching of the corals. The practice began in the Philippines in the 1960s and spread rapidly. It's hard to calculate exactly how much cyanide is being used. Scientists estimate that over 1 million kilograms of sodium cyanide is spread on coral reefs every year. Cyanide fishing is against the law in a number of countries, but enforcement is haphazard at best.
If you are fishermen, you cannot use all kind of techniques because there are regulations. But if you're out in the sea, and Indonesia is so vast, nobody watching you. So in practice, they do what they like with the techniques, yes.
The deadly mixture for corals is obtained by simply dissolving sodium cyanide crystals in seawater. A fisherman has agreed to talk to us anonymously.
What is the effect of cyanide?
Cyanide stuns the fish. It makes them a little bit dizzy, so they're easier to catch. When we release the cyanide, the coral reacts by spurting out a liquid. 2 days later, the coral has turned black all over, like it had been burned.
Why do you use this on coral reef?
Because with this method, all the fish crowd together, and all we have to do is gather them up. Back in 2000, I made $10 a day for 4 hours work. Today, I make quite a bit more. I'd say I make around $30.
Is there any risk for your health?
Yes. If you breathe in the cyanide, it's very bad for your heart and lungs.
International pressure has forced local authorities to take some action. But these few police interventions are the exception and often end without official sanction. Illegal fishermen have to receive 3 official warnings before being arrested. Arrests are rare and do nothing to discourage the practice.
Did you get caught before?
I got caught once. I was convicted of illegal fishing. I went to jail for 6 months, and I had to pay a fine of $50.
Indonesian fishermen also use this technique to catch fish intended for human consumption. Increasingly popular in Asia, the fish will be transported live to restaurants around the world, displayed in tanks, and served at premium prices. Fish that survive will metabolize part of the poison, but an estimated 80% of fish caught this way die from cyanide poisoning.
The fish that stay alive, that are caught with cyanide, and they actually make it to the consumer markets, there's not so much known about the effect of eating that. But many fish that are caught with cyanide die, and those fish are still sold, and they end up at the local market. So you can imagine that the local communities who eat that fish, because it's dead and they don't waste it, they actually probably have a lot of risk of taking a lot of cyanide that's still in the fish. That's what it died from. And they build that up in their body, but it can't be good for people.
Another illegal fishing technique is devastating coral reefs. Blast fishing. This technique is fatal. It kills the fish and utterly destroys the structure of the reef.
People use bombs to throw at big schools of fish, and then they can just scoop up the fish out of the ocean. It's a very easy way to catch a lot of fish in not so much time. You just explode a small bottle. They usually use, soft drink bottles. And if it's very close to the coral reef, you have a crater of about 1 meter. It's devastating. This fish, when it gets to the market, is damaged. So this goes to the domestic market. This is eaten locally.
This explosive is made from fertilizer according to a recipe that has been handed down through generations.
Is there lots of people around here who use the blast fishing?
Not as many as before, but some of us still do.
Why do you use blast fishing?
It's easier to feed my family. This way I can harvest a lot of fish in a short amount of time.
But now you understand all the damages that it will make to the coral reef.
Yes, I know. It destroys everything. The reef and the fish. It's hard for the resource to recover.
There are laws on the books banning all forms of illegal fishing. But in a huge country like Indonesia, enforcement is often sorely lacking. Fortunately, some people have decided to break the cycle of destruction. In the small village of Les on Bali, Made Partiana catches aquarium fish. Like the other fishermen in the village, Made used cyanide fishing for many years.
Masyarakat di sini rata-rata pada saat itu.
When I was young, in the early 80s,
Sejak tahun 80-an yang saya tahu.
the coral was brightly colored
Populernya sekali
and
dari
healthy.
tahun 86 berkembang.
But in the early
Pada saat
90s,
itu, nelayan di sini
the reef started to die.
200-an lebih untuk nelayan ikan hias. Dan daerah tangkap
They
mereka
turned
bukan hanya
black
di perairan
and
Bali,
gray.
tapi juga ke luar Bali. Dampak daripada potasium itu sendiri.
Money-wise, it was a true disaster.
Tahun 80-an itu saya lihat, ya mungkin saya belum.
The fish had no more coral to shelter in and to feed off of.
Cenderung lebih baik. Dampak lainnya juga secara ekonomi juga.
We'd catch fish for 2 months
Keberadaan sumber dayanya,
and then
ikannya,
have to wait another
kalau
10
kita
months
umpamakan
before the stock
rumah itu
recovered
sudah
enough
hancur,
for us to
otomatis
catch
ikan-ikannya
any more.
juga berkurang dan pendapatan nelayan juga
All the
cenderung
fishermen were worried.
turun gitu, tidak ketimbang tahun-tahun sebelumnya. Yang terjadi di sini ya masyarakat dalam kondisi kebingungan.
Then the government stepped in
Nah, alternatif lain
and
tidak
placed a
ada.
ban on
Dari
cyanide
pemerintah
fishing.
sendiri juga ketika hanya memberikan pelarangan jangan menggunakan potasium.
None of us had any other way to make a living,
Cara merusak, tapi
but we still had to look
belum
after
ada
our
alternatif
families.
yang bisa diberikan, hanya sekedar pelarangan saja seperti itu. Dan masyarakat semakin
Finally,
bingung.
in 2000,
Bersyukur
an
pada
NGO
tahun
came
2000
along
ada
to study the
penjajakan yang
situation
dari
and
NGO
offered us a
lokal.
solution.
Dan
They were very
tahun 2001
supportive.
mereka,
They taught us
bareng-bareng
how to fish
belajar
using nets.
bersama-sama di sini untuk
Made uses a long net that he sets out above the reef. He selects and collects the most beautiful specimens of all the fish in the net. Made holds his breath to a depth of between 4 and 10 meters. It's exhausting work, but he prefers this selective, sustainable approach that does not damage the reefs.
What we are told that they already fish for ornamental fish since 80s. Now in that years, the early years, they're using the net, the mosquito nets. And then their exporter came to us, and they're the one who introduced cyanide. Cyanide was brought to Indonesia by the Philippine fishers, yeah, to collect the high-value fish. So from say mid 80s until late like 90s in almost 2000s, cyanide is being used.
Halo.
Halo Made, kenalin ini teman-temanku.
Oh ya.
Nice to meet you.
Look at the blue one.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is one dive?
Satu kali nyelam ya?
Yes,
Just one.
When did you start to work?
Dari jam
since
8
8.
sampai kira-kira
It's
jam
2 o'clock, so now I've been working for 6 hours.
What's the next step now?
Langkah selanjutnya apa, Limade?
Ya,
I will
setelah
sort them out
ikannya
and
dipacking,
put them in plastic bags with a little added oxygen.
masukkan oksigen,
Then I take them to my buyer.
ke pengepul.
You want to go with him to the middleman, Chen?
Sure.
Boleh ikut ke pengepul?
Iya.
Okay,
boleh. Ya,
I'll get it
setelah
all
saya
ready and
packing,
we'll go.
Nanti kita bisa bersama-sama ke.
Oke, pakai apa packing?
Oke, plastik.
Made has to carry his catch safely to the buyer, who will check the quality of his fish.
Ini udaranya dari ban ya.
Oxygen stored in the inner tube is transferred to plastic bags to keep the fish healthy during transport. Over time, this exceptional fisherman has been able to create a real demand for his high-quality fish caught in a net. Some village fishermen use boats and the most rudimentary of breathing aids. Their gear consists of a small compressor, a bit of tubing, and for a lucky few, a pressure regulator. Thus equipped, fishers can descend to depths of up to 40 meters. Diving is risky under any circumstances, even more so with inadequate equipment and little or no training.
The compressor helps me dive deeper. I get a much better harvest that way. I've been careless and made some serious mistakes. Once, before I knew any better, I swam all the way to the surface without stopping halfway up. I had to be rushed to Denpasar and put in an hyperbaric chamber. A few years ago, some friends and I got the idea of sinking some old tires down to the seafloor as a shelter for the fish. I've only got one site today, but if I set up 2 sites, I could earn $40. I catch different types of fish depending on demand.
The idea of making structures to replace the damaged coral is spreading. With the help of an NGO, the fishermen of Les have begun making concrete structures to replace the coral reefs destroyed by years of cyanide fishing. They have also started a program to reintroduce coral by transplant. Under this flourishing initiative, the coral ecosystem is gradually being reborn. The efforts of these reformed fishermen are being rewarded by a slow buildup of reef fish populations. Today, the whole community of the fishermen of Les has agreed to a complete ban on cyanide fishing in the region. The village is once again living from the fish harvest, but now it's all legal. Village fishermen bring their catch to Mr. Picassi, the local buyer. He also acts as the middleman who negotiates with international exporters. Every fish is inspected and evaluated to guarantee quality. One damaged fin automatically eliminates a fish from the process.
Which one is the most precious one?
Oh, ya, di antara semua ikan
The
ini,
blue
semua
angel
yang
fish.
ini,
Mahal itu ya?
It's around
kira-kira
$1.50.
dari 15 sampai 20 ribu.
That's the price that the fisherman
Ya,
will
that
have.
medicated ya.
Yes. So what's the price when it goes to the guy in Denpasar.
This is quite a small one. I'll pay the local fisherman $1.50 for it. At Denpasar, I'll be able to sell it for $2.
And then from Denpasar, it will take the plane.
We'll take the plane to
Hong Kong,
and then after Hong Kong, they spread it to the world. US, Canada, Europe, and then we have no idea what price could be.
But the clownfish is the most popular?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sangat.
Yang paling banyak dicari
Yeah.
clownfish ya? Yeah, most popular. I think it's about the movie. Yes,
Because of the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah? Are you serious?
Yeah.
So semakin
What
mudah
accounts for the price
ditangkap,
difference
semakin
among
mudah,
various
ya.
species?
Dan juga ini.
The price depends on how rare the type of fish
populasi ikan
is,
tersebut, kalau misalnya keberadaannya banyak,
and also how difficult they are to catch.
mudah didapat.
Okay. Bisa melihat
Do
perubahan
you
di
see a
antara
difference
sebelum
since
masih pakai
2001 in the
pakai
types of
sama
fish caught and their
setelah.
numbers?
Perbedaannya apa, Pak?
Yes, a huge difference. Now that we've stopped using cyanide, the dead reefs are coming back to life, slowly. The varieties of fish we hadn't seen for a long time are gradually returning. Before, with cyanide fishing, about 5% of the fish would die. Now the mortality rate is down to 2%.
In one typical day, how much money you will earn?
75.000 dapat. Ya,
Typically, I earn maybe $7 on a bad day
hari buruk
and up to
buruk,
$15 on a good
kosong
day.
sama sekali pada saat
It all depends on weather conditions, ocean conditions, especially the height of the waves.
150.
Made earns about 10 cents for a clownfish. The most expensive fish can go for up to $2, but they are few and far between. Fishermen naturally search out the most lucrative species, and yet they are often the most endangered. There are no regulations here, nor any scientific monitoring to assess and track the state of marine populations. Mr. Percassi's fish will travel to Denpasar, the capital.
How many fish in this load today?
Berapa nih Pak kira-kira ikannya berapa?
On this trip, I have around 2,000. Usually I have 3 times more than that. So in 3 or 4 days, if ocean conditions allow, I'll travel to Denpasar with 6,000 fish.
And how many fish will survive the transport?
The mortality rate is less than 1%. As a rule, if fish die during transport, it is due to human error. And of course, sometimes the bags can burst during the trip.
Middlemen who buy the fish are in a position to turn things around dramatically. By refusing to buy fish caught using cyanide, they will encourage the kind of sustainable fishing methods needed to ensure the future of coral reef ecosystems. But economic interests often outweigh good intentions. In the lucrative market of exporting fish for human consumption, there is still a lot of work to be done.
If you catch fish with cyanide, they're not in a very good condition. You can imagine that if you have to ship them out for so many hours before they reach the market, many of them die. So we've always thought it doesn't even make business sense to use cyanides and lose so many of your catch because it's very expensive to transport them. If you look at the percentage of fish that is exported now from Indonesia, where you could say it's probably coming from cyanides, it's still around 40%. That is much less than years ago, when I was just saying 5 years ago, I think the majority, maybe 80 to 90% came from cyanide fisheries, but it's still a lot.
It's impossible to tell with the naked eye whether these live fish were caught using cyanide, but they are still widely available on the market. Cyanide is a powerful toxic compound that binds to hemoglobin, blocking the transport of oxygen. Though it may be difficult to assess its long-term impact on human health, the risk is real. Restaurants are not regulated, and patrons seldom have any idea of how the fish on their plate was caught. In a protected bunker, a food fish exporter who wishes to remain anonymous because of a series of threats has changed his ways.
This exporter that we are today is actually a very special person, because a couple of years ago he contacted WWF and he said, you know, I'm in this business and I'm seeing that there are many practices that are not sustainable, and I'm really worried about my business. What can I do? I don't know what to do.
The exporters set up a network of fishermen who are restricted to net fishing. Their catch is destined for big city restaurants. Using cyanide is strictly forbidden on pain of expulsion, and participating fishermen get better prices for their fish. The fish, especially groupers, are handled with great care by a team trained to the highest standards.
This exporter doesn't buy cyanide fish. He doesn't buy fish that is too small. He doesn't buy fish that, you know, has the eggs, is ready to spawn. So he does everything that he can do. I think he is the best example of, you know, a future where you can have a sustainable business and make money and support all these fishermen in these remote places. However, he's the only one, and he's just by himself. And there's not enough support by the government to work on the other exporters that actually still have very unsustainable practices.
The exporter has also designed oxygenated transport boxes so the fish can breathe better during long international trips. He has managed to convince some airline companies to accept these transport boxes equipped with an oxygen cylinder for shipping on cargo planes. This exporter's pioneering initiative doesn't please everyone. He has to operate under high security. Other exporters who use cyanide do not appreciate competition that breaks the mold. But the demand for clean fish is gaining ground, and some restaurants are ready to pay a premium for a product that meets the highest standards. After 8 hours in transit, Made's fish finally reached the second middleman, the exporter with an order book brimming with international orders.
When the fish come in, usually they come in the morning. We open the bags, let them sit in the screening area for 4 or 5 hours. After that, we move it to a quarantine system. We keep them over there for a few days to see if there's any problem with disease or broken fins, those kind of things. So after a few days of quarantines, we move them to our regular systems. So this is the place where we do the packing. Okay, now they are doing oxygen the fish. After that, they will move over there for putting in the box.
I suppose that because it's cargo by plane, it's very expensive. So the quantity of water is important.
Oh, exactly. Because depends on where they are going and how long the flight going to take. We pack differently. The farther they go, we put more water, more oxygens. Okay, if this is going to Asia, it's probably just a few hours flight, then it's less water. Smaller bags, of course, smaller bags, less water, less oxygens. So different place, different way of packing.
Yeah, because of course, more water, more kilo, more money.
Yeah,
right?
more expensive. Yeah. This is Pakesi. He's my good supplier. And every week he brings fish to us. Okay, so his fish is all net caught, no any cyanide or any medicines. So we really like his fish, and we can see the difference from him and then the other supplier.
Yeah. And is there a way that you can see if a fisherman uses cyanide?
It's very difficult when the fish just come in and to tell the difference between cyanide caught or net caught. So what we need to do is have a really good relationship with our supplier, and we know the history of the fish, and we can trust this supplier. And this, of course, needs years to build this trust.
This is Nemo, right?
Yes.
And this is the new star when Disney will release a new film, Dory, which is a blue tang, right?
Right, that's true.
What was the impact of the film Finding Nemo on the business?
Oh, that was huge. It was a big help for the business because everyone was looking for Nemos, for this clownfish. We think there would be a huge demand for this fish, and we already prepared for it. Hopefully, in 2 years, they are ready. You know, we have a lot of stock for the customer.
Aquarium fish, like food fish, are sent to the international airport at Denpasar every day. They then begin their long journey to international importers who will ship them to wholesalers around the world who, in turn, will sell them to retail shops or restaurants.
So everything we see here are fish that are leaving. This is going to Munich, this is to Charles de Gaulle in Paris, and the crates that just went by are for London. Tens of thousands of fish leave every day going just about everywhere with different suppliers. It's clear that Bali is one of the major exporters of tropical fish to the world.
A fish that very common is like a clownfish. Now, clownfish, the increase of the price from the fishermen to the first buyer, the first middleman, they probably only twice more expensive. And then from the middleman to the exporter, they another double price. Now, from the exporter to the importer, estimate probably they 5 times more. Okay. And then from that on could be like 20 to 25 times. But that's for the fish with a not high value fish. Now for the high value fish like angel or blue tang, that could be like 100 times. That is really amazing.
At every stage, the price shoots up. Made, the fisherman from Les, received only 10 cents for his clownfish. The market is expanding exponentially, putting more and more pressure on fish populations. Fish farming could help to meet the skyrocketing demand for both aquarium fish and food fish. Balinese entrepreneur Mr. Chu has an extensive operation. This reproductive center for exotic fish is one of the few to successfully breed some species of fish in tanks.
Ini kita taruh angel di sini.
Angelfish.
Yeah, angelfish.
And you can breed them.
Ya, kami sudah ada 4 jenis sudah bisa sukses.
Yeah, he's breeding. It's like four species now.
This is less damaging for the environment. I'm here every day looking after things.
Mr. Chu has even been able to create his own variety of clownfish. Their distinctive markings make them even more valuable on the market.
How many clownfish did he send around the world in the last year?
Around 1 million.
So what will happen when they're going to release the new Disney film, Dory?
These fish are very difficult to reproduce. So if I succeed, I'll be a millionaire for sure.
Okay, yeah.
I hope we'll be able to meet the demand with farm fish and leave the rest in the ocean.
He really emphasized that if it happened, I mean, like just took it from the breeding, not from the ocean. You know, it's more healthy, more beautiful.
So good for nature and good for business.
Thank you.
So what do we have here?
Ini ada Napoleon.
Oh, Napoleon.
Yeah. Bisa nggak, Pak?
Oke, bisa.
Napoleon fish numbers have dropped by 50% over the last 30 years because of strong demand on the food fish market. Despite an export ban, Napoleon fish are still on the menu in fine restaurants in China and Hong Kong. Unconcerned by their protected status, your chef will prepare a Napoleon the way you like it for the tidy sum of $250 to $300 a kilo.
When did he start this program with Napoleon?
Kapan Bapak memulai program dengan Napoleon ini?
The government of Indonesia started the program, but abandoned it. I took it over 4 years ago. It's an endangered species. We're trying to get them to reproduce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a very rare fish.
Yeah.
It's under the CITES, so it cannot be exported to other country.
And if he's successful breeding it,
For science, it's going to be a great victory. Yeah.
Convincing other fishermen to use sustainable techniques is always complicated. We meet with them and explain things, and they'll agree to start fishing with a net. But after a few days, they go back to their old ways. So now what we do is link up with one local fisherman, who then becomes our ambassador to the other fishermen in the area. But it takes time. Educating people, getting them to really understand, is a long process. So far, we've been able to set up teams in several areas, in different parts of Indonesia.
Unfortunately, nothing is black and white. So the problem is not black and white. You cannot say that these small-scale fishermen are criminals, you know. It's, for them, the amount of money that they make is very, very small. You cannot buy this fish for a good price and only pay, I don't know, a few % of that to the fisherman who's doing all the work, and this is all he has. Something has to change in terms of, you know, the value that the fisherman gets. If he gets a little bit more, maybe, you know, he's also more careful with the environment. So it's important to understand who benefits most in this industry. And there's always, I think, a case to make that the fisherman who is responsible should get a fair price.
Over 1 billion people depend directly on fish for survival. It's the most highly sought-after source of protein on the planet, and the global population boom will only increase demand for ever more fish. To meet this ever-growing demand, we need to take a cold, hard look at the ways fish are caught to ensure renewal of the resource. Blast fishing and cyanide fishing, already banned by law, must be subject to heightened monitoring in order to halt the disaster now in progress. It is vital that we rethink our methods of harvesting the sea's bounty. Sustainable fishing practices that conserve the fish and their environment must urgently be established if we have any hope of ensuring our food security for the future.